What's up, everybody? This is the Around the Association podcast, and this is the Kawhi Leonard trade edition of the podcast today. I'm your host, Danny Thompson. Check me out on Twitter at NBADT29, and also the site is aroundtheassociation.com, as well as this Around the Association radio on Facebook. So, it came to my attention around 4:30 this morning. My cell phone goes completely off, and it was nothing but notifications about a deal that was in the works of being done. It was completed early this morning, right around lunchtime, completely all the way through. I think first breakfast to brunch part of the day, where the Toronto Raptors have traded All-Star DeMar DeRozan and received at the same time the All-Star Kawhi Leonard in a 4-team trade that involved the draft pick. So let's break down the trade. The specifics all the way through. The Toronto Raptors acquired, of course, Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green in exchange for for DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a protected first-round 2019 pick from the Toronto Raptors. So it's the ongoing saga that now has just ended. Kawhi Leonard's quest to get out of San Antonio actually got him sent to another country. Leonard for those who've been missing out or been stuck under a rock for the last, I don't know, the majority of the NBA season last year, Kawhi Leonard was unhappy with his injury situation. Kawhi was hurt. There was a lot of bad feelings between both Kawhi's camp, which includes his uncle, and Kawhi's people, as well as the Spurs. Kawhi plays 9 games, pretty much missed the entire season except for 9 games. The organization felt he was healthy. Kawhi was hurt. A lot of feelings were exchanged. There was some bad incidents involving players. Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker calling out Kawhi's injury. It led to some team meetings that didn't go very well. And also, it ultimately ended up with Kawhi Leonard not being on the bench for the team in their playoff run, and it led to ultimately this trade demand that he made, where he forced basically the Spurs to try to trade him to the Lakers, a la what Paul George tried with the Pacers a year ago. Just like Paul George ended up in Toronto, in Oklahoma City, Kawhi Leonard now ends up in Toronto. Well, it's a calculated risk by the Toronto Raptors. I think it's a very calculated risk by the Raptors at this point. So if you look at the Raptors going into this trade, the Raptors were a team that might have possibly peaked at its best. The Raptors have been up in the Eastern Conference Elite the last couple seasons, and pretty much the only reason why they haven't been to the finals is because some guy wore number 23 playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers and basically impeded their entire run over the last couple years in the playoffs. LeBron James pretty much owned the city of Toronto. Well, LeBron James signs in Los Angeles. The Raptors end up firing Dwayne Casey, the guy who's gotten them to this point, and now they have traded their all-star and a guy who, besides the fact that he's one of the best guys in the NBA, a guy who truly, really wanted to be a Raptor for life. This is the second time in less than a year a guy who signs a long-term deal with all intentions on playing long-term with a franchise gets traded. It happened to Blake Griffin back in December when he was traded from the Clippers to the Pistons, and now it's happened to All-Star DeMar DeRozan, a guy who was not just who loved Toronto, the city loved him at the same time, and they embraced him at the same time. But this trade had to happen. The Raptors hired head coach Nick Nurse, a guy who's more of a player development coach, and the Raptors were in a situation with a salary cap that you really only had a 1 to 2 year window. And when I say a 1 to 2 year window, if you look at the way the Raptors are shaped, DeMar DeRozan's under contract. He has 3 years of, I think, $84 million over the next couple of years, barring in this trade situation. On top of that, you have Kyle Lowry's contract, which is 2 years at $64 million, 31 this year, 33 next year. On top of the fact they're paying Serge Ibaka over $20 million over the next 2 seasons. Mix in the fact of they still are paying Norman Powell over $10 million a year because that contract kicks in. They got to deal with Jonas Valanciunas this summer. On top of, they're still with a young group on the bench that has a very, very, really, really good young core. That includes OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, who just signed an extension this summer for 2 years, around $9.5 million per season. They had Poeltl. They had one of the best benches in the NBA last season from top to bottom. They got it done. VanVleet, let's say, was a 6-man of the year candidate. And the Raptors bench at times, or don't forget Pascal Siakam, was one, like I said, would dominate all season long. But there's only so much that main core of Lowry, DeRozan, Valanciunas, and even Ibaka can accomplish. And really, in the Eastern Conference, the Raptors had no room to make any moves. Now, Kyle Lowry does have the expensive contract. Like I say, he has one more guaranteed year next season, not this season coming up, but the following season. On top of that, and he's unrestricted free agent in 2020. But the Raptors and Masai Ujiri and the entire front office is at this point now where the window is closing. And you can go back in the entire history of the Toronto Raptors, and the Raptors have never had a player to the caliber of Kawhi Leonard ever in the franchise history. Leonard walks in as the best player in franchise history without playing one single minute based upon what he's accomplished and what his skill set is and what he brings to the table. Nothing against Vince Carter, nothing against Damon Stoudemire, nothing against Tracy McGrady, Chris Bosh, or even DeRozan now, or even Kyle Lowry, guys who have been all-stars on this team previously, and award winners as well, too. But none of them, and I mean none of them, come in with the pedigree of Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is one of the 5 best players in the NBA. You can even consider him top 3 when he's healthy. He's the best two-way player in the game. A guy that can change the game on both sides of the ball. He's a guy that can guard LeBron James and Kevin Durant one-on-one, and you don't have nothing to worry about. His offensive game has risen to all new types of levels over the last couple of years because of how hard of a worker he's been. It just so happens the last 9 months of his basketball career has now torpedoed himself into the situation he's in now. But if you're the Raptors, it is a perfectly calculated risk. Because if you cannot sign Kawhi Leonard next summer, they also trade for Danny Green, who's also on an expiring deal next summer. The summer coming up, the Raptors have now gotten rid of DeRozan's salary. So what does that mean? Well, really, honestly, if Kyle Lowry is going to have to go, Lowry is going to be a nice trade target because, like I say, he has 1 year left on the deal at the end of the season. If you trade Ibaka, who will have 1 year left in his deal, then guess what? You've cleared all your books. And the Raptors are one of those teams where I think after this year, if you go all in and Kawhi decides to leave, you're going to start the rebuilding process because Kyle Lowry is not a spring chicken anymore. He's 32 years old. He'll be 34 by the end of his contract. Ibaka is going to be in his early 30s by the time his contract is up too, because he's been in the league just about as long as Lowry has. And DeRozan is the star player, but it's going to be kind of hard to build around a guy like DeRozan who just takes jump shots. So who is the future franchise player of the Raptors? It's the guy who couldn't get off the bench, the guy who would split time because his previous head coach wouldn't use him in all situations. Jonas Valanciunas is in the perfect position to do something really special in the upcoming season. Now, with the new head coach who's going to be a player development coach, we might be able to see the Jonas that we see every single summer for the Lithuanian national team. A guy that can be a 20-10 guy on a consistent basis when he's given playing time, when he's given the opportunity to get the ball in his hands. One thing about DeRozan was a guy who had to have the ball in his hands because of his offensive ability. That's the thing that DeRozan does. DeRozan creates offense. Now, mind you, he doesn't go to the rim. He also gets to the free throw line. He's a poor three-point shooter, which I have a feeling when I talk about the Spurs side of things, that's going to change. But DeRozan was their best shot creator. And now Leonard, a guy who can hit the three-point shot, is going to be much more of a guy that can create, but not near as DeRozan. Not nearly as good as DeRozan. And so that's going to force Kyle Lowry to play a lot more pick and roll, allow him to have more of the ball of his hands, and then really they're going to force feed the big guy. And Valanciunas might be one of the best centers in the league, statistic-wise, at the end of next season, because I think Nick Nurse is going to give him the basketball. On the Raptors side of things, when it comes to trading DeRozan, so you look what went out. The most important thing, I know Jakob Poeltl is a very, very talented center, but they had to re-sign him. So that's the reason why I think Valanciunas is part of this core going forward with these young guys. One of the main things the Raptors didn't get up this deal was second-year small forward OG Anunoby, a guy that has tremendous talent, not much of the offensive guy. He's not very much of a shooter, but he just reminds me so much of Andre Iguodala, a guy that can do so many different things, can defend, is very long, very athletic, and that's what OG Anunoby brings to the table. Now, if he develops some kind of offensive game, then the sky is potentially the limit. But right now, he is Andre Iguodala as a young kid in Philadelphia. He's a guy that's very versatile, a guy that can play the wing, a guy that can defend at a high level. Now you put him, you'll probably put him in the starting lineup, or they're going to try to find some kind of way to get Norman Powell playing time because they're paying him $10 million a season going forward. The Raptors did not give up any of the young pieces. So for them not trading Anunoby, that's also another win. And you really look at what the Raptors are doing, they're all in on the future. The one thing the Raptors have had is the best G League squad over the last couple years, not just record-wise, but the fact of the talent they have grown up for Raptors 905 over the last few years has been amazing. And when I say the development, those guys, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, who's on the team this year, Lorenzo Brown, who I think will probably make the Raptors this year. You look at what they've done with every single young player they had, even with Nogueira, just what they've done transition-wise on this roster and what they've done development-wise is really something special. And the Raptors have done a great job with that. They have a very good young core. So even if Leonard walks away or even Danny Green walks away, it doesn't matter. The Raptors are in good shape. So look at the Raptors starting five. I think this is my projected starting five going into the season. You're looking at the starting five being Kyle Lowry at the point guard, Danny Green at the shooting guard. You have Kwahi at the 3, Serge Ibaka at the 4, and Jonas Valanciunas at the 5. And Fred VanVleet, your first guy off the bench. With OG Anunoby right then and there, the second guy real quick. Where does this group sit? Toronto's all in. Toronto has every opportunity to win the Eastern Conference now. Kawhi Leonard is that much of a difference. Do not sleep on the Toronto Raptors winning the Eastern Conference. I know the Boston Celtics are coming back with guys off injuries, and Kawhi Leonard's coming off his, but Kawhi's one player. Boston has 2 guys coming off injuries. Before we hand Philadelphia the mantle just yet, there's still a bunch of young kids. They didn't get anything in the offseason to push them over the edge. They're really banking on what Ben Simmons can do and what Joel Embiid's going to do in their growing years, and what can they get from Markelle Fultz. There's too many questions. The only question in Toronto is that, number one, if Kawhi wants to be there, how dangerous they can be. And here's another thing. Even if Kawhi doesn't want to go there, or doesn't want to stay in Toronto, or show up, you can redirect Kawhi Leonard back to LA. Why would you want to do that, you say? Because if you're the Toronto Raptors, being in the position you are right now, and Kawhi says he's not going to show up, he's going to sit the entire season out, and the Lakers came back at you with an offer including Brandon Ingram and Josh Hart and some picks, if you're if you're Yuri and the company in the MLE, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, you pull that trade immediately. Why didn't the Spurs do it? Because the Spurs wanted the arm and the leg, because you don't want to deal with Kawhi Leonard in your conference every single year after you traded him. No, 4 times a year and potentially the playoffs, not a chance. So, if Yuri gets creative, he can go get a second team like the Lakers and maybe even find a third team, Orlando, or maybe Toronto, maybe even Oklahoma City if someone's going to throw in Melo and buy him out. And you can possibly make this trade bigger. So, and that's if Kawhi doesn't want to be there. But I think on paper, the Raptors, to me right now, until we get this Marcus Smart situation settled, as of this very moment, I think the Raptors are favorites in the East with Kawhi. Now, if the downside is if Kawhi walks away, he walks away as a free agent, and Danny Green will probably walk behind that. But the good news is $30 million comes off the cap. And if you, I know the Raptors are in the tax now. I'm not sure how much of the tax they would be in if all those moves happened over the summer. Now let's look at things from the Spurs' perspective. The Spurs, in listening to Greg Popovich's press conference today, is excited to have DeRozan in play. DeRozan wasn't happy leaving Toronto to go to San Antonio, but the good news is that he doesn't have to deal with harsh winters, and Greg Popovich is going to make sure that he puts him in his best spots on the floor and get him to be even a better scorer than what he is right now. What did the Spurs get? Well, they got Jakob Poeltl, a guy who's going to be taking over the center position, I think, in the near future, with the aging Paul Gasol. Bertans is solid, but really the future is going to be Poeltl. I think it's a great future. He's a Greg Popovich type player, hard worker, great on the boards, does all the little things. But back to back to DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan is going to have a phenomenal season. He's playing for Greg Popovich, a guy who's going to be his Team USA head coach when they start mini camp in the next couple days. DeRozan is going to be on a mission. DeMar is expecting to have LeBron out of his conference in every way possible to beat both Boston, Philadelphia, and any other 5 teams in the playoffs to get himself to the finals. Now he's got to do it LeBron all over again, but the thing is he has a little bit more talent. DeAndre Murray, you have LaMarcus Aldridge, who's an all-star. Murray was an all-defensive team player. Don't forget, this team, they brought back Marco Bellinelli. They have Rudy Gay. They have a bunch of guys who can do a bunch of different things, but DeRozan slides in at the shooting guard position and will just be told to get to the free throw line and hit the mid-range shot. LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan in the mid-range game combined, separately is outstanding, but together, they might be the best mid-range duo in the entire league. Now look at the Spurs and what they're doing with their cap situation. And well, the Spurs are pretty much have now married themselves to DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan has 3 years, over $83 million left on his contract, and it's going to be kind of difficult to move the guy at this point in time. It can happen, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon. So they're with him. They're with Murray. They're with Lonnie Walker, a guy I did discuss earlier, who had a pretty okay summer league, and a guy who's getting adjusted to the NBA. And you have Gasol, you have Aldridge. They did lose Anderson over to Memphis, a guy they weren't going to match any type of major off anyway. It's just the fact of what they had on the roster. But you look at their starting five now. You have DeAndre Murray at the point guard. You have DeMar DeRozan at the 2. You have Rudy Gay. I think is going to take over at the 3 at the small forward position. You have LaMarcus Aldridge and you have Pau Gasol as starting 5. And then you look at Patty Mills, Marco Bellinelli being guys off the bench as your 6th and 7th man. So where do the Spurs fit right now? Well, it's hard to lose an all-star who's one of the best defenders in the entire league, but you replace him with an all-star who has an elite offensive game. Well, right now, currently constructed, I think the Spurs right now are the 3rd best team in the Western Conference. They are behind Golden State. They're still behind Houston until Houston makes the decision on Clint Capella. They have now jumped in front of the Lakers for the 3rd spot in the Western Conference. I think just the talent difference and the coaching difference is so much better on the Spurs side of things. You have Greg Popovich going against a guy like Luke Walton. Walton's to be his 2nd full season in the league. He was the lead assistant in Golden State for a very long time. But when you have that and you look at what the Spurs can do, they're going to cause damage. If they get to the right series, I see the Western Conference Finals. I'm just not sure how they're going to stop DeMarcus Cousins. So those are my thoughts on the trade. It's one of the best trades we've had in a while, but this deal had to be done. The Spurs are trying to extend the life. Even Greg Popovich said the Spurs are trying to extend the life because guess what? They don't rebuild. They just retool. And the Spurs retool by starting with DeMar DeRozan. And Spurs fans are going to love him because DeRozan gives you everything he has. Yes, he had that bad series against Cleveland in the playoffs, but everybody has those moments. And LeBron just has that effect, not just on DeRozan, but the entire team. This Spurs team is a 55-win team right now, the way they're currently constructed with the players and the way Greg Popovich coach. So I like the Spurs to be done, and so like I said, the main reason why this deal was done is Toronto wanted to go all in. If you're gonna beat Boston and Philadelphia, do it now before Boston and I said Boston and the other 2 teams in New York start reloading on guys in July. So follow me on Twitter at NBADT29. Also, at the same time, the Rally Association website, which is rallyassociation.com, it's down for maintenance. I'm still working on getting the entire layout done. We'll have a big announcement when it's ready to be, ready to back up and going. At the same time, follow the show on Facebook, which is Around the Association Radio on Facebook. Leave your comments below. Share, like, and love. Just remember, if you are on Spotify, the show is on Spotify. Look it up on Spotify, Around the Association, Around the Association on Spotify. If you're on iTunes, subscribe. If you're on Spreaker, subscribe. If you're on iHeartRadio, subscribe. Pass it on to your friends. And most importantly, the best part about it is the show is free. You don't have to spend a single dollar, a single dime to support the show. We appreciate all the love, guys. Like I said, we have new podcasts coming up later on this week. And yes, I will be getting to some things about teams and their off seasons and what I saw at Summer League. There's so much more to talk about because right now, this Kawhi Leonard trade, when Marcus Smart signs his contract and Clint Capella signs his, NBA off season for the most part is done. So I'll catch you guys later for Around the Association podcast. Peace.